Hello. Um, I can't hear you.
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You'd think
Sweet.
that by now I'd know what I was doing, and I still don't.
I don't understand. I don't understand any of this stuff. Like, I know enough to get on here, but like, I don't know. I think I've just kind of let technology do its
You,
thing, and I haven't kept up
I never
with
had
it.
until this year. Like when I decided I was
Mm.
going to do this, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll do this, and it would be great." And then all of a sudden, it was just like obsessively watching YouTube videos, and I still struggle. Like today, I was dealing with this tech thing for hours. It's crazy. I think it's almost a better choice just to say no.
I know.
Like it's
It's always
crazy.
so complicated.
I would think that like after all this studying, the only thing that it's given me is like patience.
Mm.
I've become like
Yeah.
I've become way more patient at just like realizing that eventually I'll probably it will figure itself out, whereas before. But I was in here literally 2 days ago like by myself going like swearing and like trying not to punch something, so immensely frustrated with
It's
nowhere to run.
it's so frustrating because you can't take out your frustrations on technology.
No,
Like
because it
it's not,
backfires. It
yeah, and
backfires.
if it's not doing what you want it to do, you have no choice but to just kind of like wait it out or like try and figure it out,
It
which
was
is
a
the most frustrating thing to me.
it was a login attempt. Where I had tried to log in 3 times and then it shut me out, and I was just like,
Oh,
no.
oh yeah. And then it's like we're sending this to a phone number, we're sending this code
Yes.
to a phone number, and then you're like, what phone number is that?
And it
I
didn't get
don't know.
sent, and then I just kept on trying, and then I wasn't patient enough, and then it shut me out and said computer says no.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
And
very familiar with that frustration loop.
how are you otherwise?
I'm good. Yeah. I'm going on tour next week for
Oh,
like the first, it's like I'm gone for like a month, and it's the first time I was on tour with Joel in Newfoundland for like 2 weeks before Christmas, but this is like in the States, and it's gonna be like my first real post pandemic tour. Well, I guess we're still in a pandemic,
I'm
but
so glad that we're talking now. I was just as I was setting this up, I was like, man, I think you're going. Like I think you're going, and that's the Crash Test Dummies tour,
yeah,
opening all the shows.
yep.
For how long?
I'm gone. I leave on the 22nd, and I think I get back on the 23rd. So yeah, it's like a full month. Sorry, my cat might interrupt at
That's okay.
points.
Cats are welcome. This is a cat friendly
She's
podcast.
she's very needy.
So I gotta like, how are you feeling about that? Are you excited to be back on the road? Are you nervous? I mean, there must be so many feelings about that's like a legitimate tour, and in the States, like that's playing, you're
I know.
flying, and then wow.
Yep, flying and then driving. I don't know. I feel like it doesn't feel real because everything has just gotten canceled or pushed. So every time a gig is coming up now, I'm kind of like, I just, it doesn't feel real because I'm not sure if it's actually going to happen or not.
Yeah.
I mean, this feels like it's going to happen. So I think it'll feel more real closer to the day that I have to leave. But I'm excited. I'm really nervous. It's been a long time since I've been on the road for a month. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that I'm so out of shape as far as touring goes. I think it's going to be like really intense, but I can't wait. I can't wait to get out of here.
Really? Yeah. Okay. So there is some excitement too. Just like the movement element is exciting.
Yes, the movement element is definitely exciting. I haven't felt like a musician in 2 years, pretty much. Like, I don't know about you, but I need to get out on the road for a good amount of time and like get back into the groove. Like when I was in Newfoundland, it was only a couple weeks, and I was just mostly playing guitar with Joel, so it wasn't even really my own thing. So it'd be nice to play like my own set. And it's good that it's an opening set, so I can kind of like ease back into it. I'm really
Yeah,
out
but
of
it's
shape.
solo, so it's exposed. It's just you.
Mm,
You're doing okay. Yeah, that's a lot, man. That's a lot. That's
yeah.
cool, though. I'm glad that you're excited. I'm. I think I'm in the same boat. Like I was happy to be not touring for like the first little while, and now I'm like,
Yeah, same.
I think we all did that. We were all running at such a crazy pace that all of a sudden, when it slowed down, we were like, you know what, this is cool. Okay, I can
Yeah.
do things I haven't done for a long time. But then this whole thing started slipping in that you're like, well, if I'm not a musician, if I'm not touring, if I'm not doing shows, if I'm not a performer, then what am I? Like, what am I doing? I think this is the thing that we haven't totally figured out is like how much this is affected. When we talk about, oh, it's been hard on musicians, it's like, it's hard on everybody. But I don't think it's about like just the finances of it being hard for a musician. It's hard because it's like you start to question your purpose because you're not actually able
Mm,
to do the thing that you've kind of been building, you know?
yeah, it's really weird. I was talking to a friend the other day about how, like, I don't really remember who I was before
Yeah.
this pandemic. Like, I've changed so much, and it's just really weird thinking about the before time and going back to it. And I don't know, it's such
There's
a,
no going
it's gonna
back.
be, yeah, I guess there is no going back. It's gonna be really interesting to see how people process this in the coming years. Like, once things do start to go back to normal, like
Mm-hmm.
how we're gonna talk about it. And yeah, it'll be interesting when once it's in the
It's
rear
going to be
view.
interesting in like 2 weeks' time how you feel being on the road and just being in that rhythm again. You know what I mean? If it feels
True.
like a natural rhythm or if it feels like, okay, maybe this is going to change or, I mean, I did have friends that, Afi was out, like Bahamas was out for the whole fall and I think he was happy as a clam. He was having a great
Yeah.
time, and we did shows in the fall and it was like, it was almost like it had kind of come almost, full circle and that we realized what we had taken for granted to a certain extent,
Mm,
like just how awesome it is to
yeah.
play with your friends and like,
So true. Yeah, every show I've played has been so nice. And yeah, it really has renewed my love of performing and playing music. Feel I've been feeling so creative lately, and I feel like I haven't had this like this love for it in a while, which has been really nice. I think it's rekindled my love for being creative and playing music. It feels like fun right now. It feels really, really fun. And um, it's really nice. I
yeah,
appreciate it a lot.
yeah, that is such, and it's such a good place to be creatively.
It's a
It's
sweet spot.
such a good place. It is the sweet spot, and it's sometimes hard to be in that sweet spot when there's deadlines and when everything's happening and when you're like, okay, I'm coming off tour and I'm going to do this, and it is hard to get in that sweet spot. Have you
Hmm.
been in that sweet spot the whole pandemic, or do you find it now? Like, is this a particular time in the last couple of years that you've been, or has it been like the last couple of years have been creatively great?
Yeah, I think at first it wasn't really, and then I started feeling really creative, and I was writing songs all the time and having a lot of fun just working on stuff here at home because I had so much free time. I was just experimenting and writing whatever I felt like writing with no intent to really release any of it, no plan to have a new record. Like I felt like there was no pressure, which was really cool. And I think it gave me it made me feel really free. Like I could just do whatever I wanted and experiment, which I've always been free to do that. There's no one telling me that I can't do that. But for some reason, like now I just feel like I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. I
It's
just
the
felt all this
weirdest thing.
space.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's weird because Rose said that too. She called it the imaginary hurricane, like this thing, or I think is what she
Yeah.
referred to it as the tornado or whatever, this thing that's kind of like, but really most of it's imaginary. Like we've had that freedom. I feel exactly the same way. I've felt like so liberated making records and it's been really fun.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you go back to square one because you're like, well, I don't know what this is going to mean. Are we going to put this out? I don't know what my career even looks like, but I do know I want to make music. So what am I going to make? Do you know what I
Mm,
mean? Like it gets like really kind of fundamental. It's not like,
yeah.
oh, I wonder how this is going to do on Americana radio. It's like I don't know if I'm going to play a
Exactly.
show again. So
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I'm just gonna get as weird as I want here and
Yeah,
see what happens.
and you get good stuff. Like you get, I find, I mean, it's been like that's how art is meant to be made, right? Like likely that is where the good stuff
Absolutely.
comes from. It's not when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, how am I going to make something that's great for Americana radio? That's not going to make
Yeah,
a good song.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, I'm in a place like with it where I feel like I'm a teenager again or something. Like it feels fresh and new and exciting. Like I'm it's like an adventure trying to come up with new weird things and it's just kind of been the best.
Well, and you've been kind of also taking control in the studio a little bit too, right? Like you're the last single you just put out was recorded and produced by you. I mean, and you and Joel have always worked really collaboratively in the studio. It hasn't just been Joel or anything, but it's cool that like I find that, and this has kind of happened as well, is that with that experimentation has been the desire to be like, what happens when I get the keys to the car? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
is that has that been part of it for you? Like now the experimentation has now moved into the studio because that track sounds amazing. It sounds
Thanks,
amazing, and
David.
it sounds different. It sounds
Yeah,
new. It sounds
definitely.
fresh. It does have a different vibe, and I like. I mean, I wrote you right away. Like that song sounds. All of your stuff has sounded great, but that has a very different character. And I was like, okay, this is Mo, right? Like this is Mo. Like this is so you were at the board for the first time producing, doing it yourself. You played all the
Yes,
instruments too?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was so fun. I like I've kind of been I've had it in my mind that that's something that I've wanted to do eventually was just get in there myself, but I've been afraid to do it because it's just kind of it's nice to have someone else in there, especially someone like Joel who's established and he's just been making and recording records for a really long time. So it's kind of like safe to have him there for me, to bounce ideas off of. But I felt like with these songs, I had come up with um, like the fundamental production at home here. So I kind of knew what I wanted already. And then I just went for it. I was like, I don't have a record ready to record. I don't think I've got a bunch of songs, but I just wanted to get in there and with no expectation and just see what happened. I had three songs finished. So I did these three songs, and the one that I put out was one of them, obviously. And it just came together really quickly and it was super fun. And I'm really happy with it. And I'm going back in there again soon. And probably after I get back from tour, I'll record a few more things. And the plan is to release an EP at some
Yeah.
point.
It's kind of nice at this point. I find that there's not really the same. One thing that's been kind of liberating too is this idea that like if you're feeling good and you want to record a few songs, you can put those out. Like it really isn't this whole like everything's about an album and then you got to tour the album, or even
Yeah.
you have to play the songs live. Because
Yeah.
again, like we've been existing in this world that we haven't been imagining live shows. I think for a lot of us, it's been
Hmm.
so you kind of I think that you end up experimenting with different sounds and vibes because you're not thinking about okay, how's this going to be on stage. Often when I'm writing, I'm thinking about how's this going to translate. Whereas in this case now, I've been thinking more about like okay, what is this? What am I creating? Like I'm not thinking about the next stage yet because I don't know if that stage it eventually will happen. But
Yeah.
so I find that is a cool. I sometimes think that maybe this pandemic has given us some freedom in that way, and now thankfully, like the way to release music has opened up. We don't
Hmm.
make any money off of it, but at the same time, it's like we are free to release 3 songs, 5 songs,
Yeah.
one song. That's cool.
Yeah. It's really cool. I really like it. And um, yeah, I don't know. It's the when you said that song sounded like me, that's what everybody's kind of been telling me. They're like, "Oh yeah, that really like sounds like you." Like people who know me, which is nice. And I feel like that's kind of like that's the goal sort of is to distill like what makes you unique into art. And that's kind of what I've always tried to do. And getting in there and having it just be my voice has been really cool.
It
I'm looking
is.
forward to getting in there again.
Well, it's great that you're able to find that voice that this time has brought you closer to that voice, and also being in the studio and doing it yourself has kind of get you closer to that. I mean, as you said, that is. I got interviewed this morning for like a high school in St. Stephen, and the person was like, "Well, what do you think like makes a hit song or like a great piece of art?" You know, and I was kind of like, "Well, there's no, like yesterday we were driving with my kids and Stairway to Heaven came on, and it has this like insane intro and it's 7.5 minutes, and I'm like, I don't even know what the chorus of this song is. Like it's I could tell you the rules of songwriting, and then this like super smash would break all the rules, right? Like ultimately
Exactly.
it's just about it being like, as you said, reflective of some sort of unique entity, in that case Led Zeppelin, in your case Mo Kenney. But like, and now I'm doing this radio show, so I'm listening to so much more music than I ever did, and I'm so
Mm,
much less concerned about genre than I was. I'm so much less concerned about details and so much more concerned about vibe, like whether
mm,
I'm convinced.
yeah,
Because it can be a million different things that will convince you. Like it can be the heaviest thing in the world, and you're like, "Yep, sounds real to me."
yeah, exactly. You can sniff it out. Like you feel it immediately when you listen to something and it feels real and you can tell that it's genuinely reflective of the person who made it. That's really cool. I find my favorite records are like the weird records that really transport you into someone else's world. And I think that's really effective art. And I just love that kind of music.
Yeah, and who have been? I mean, who are the artists that you're listening to a lot now these days? Who are you really into these days?
Oh man, that most recent Fiona Apple record really did it for me.
I've
Fetch the
never
Bolt.
listened to it. I've heard it's amazing, and I've never listened to it. Josh wrote me and said you got to listen to it. Never did yet.
David, you gotta
Okay,
listen to it.
okay.
It's so good. Yeah,
Wait,
it's so good. Trying to think of what else. I got a bunch of records over there. I listen to a lot of old stuff too. I've been listening to a lot of Little Richard and Nina Simone lately. Elliott
talk
Smith's
about
like an
you.
old,
Yeah, talk about unique voices. Sorry to interrupt. Just Little Richard,
it's
Nina
all right.
Simone. I mean, like
Oh yeah,
you listen to those
yeah.
voices, that expression, that
So
way
good.
it's so good and
So
so
good.
unfiltered. It's
Mm-hmm.
so expressive. Both
Mm-hmm.
of those singers and piano
Yeah.
players.
Yeah. So good. Big Thief, I've been really into.
Yeah,
Do you listen to them at all?
yeah.
Adrian Lenker released a couple solo records, and I really, really like those. She's pretty prolific. Like Big Thief will release a record, and then she'll release a solo record,
Yeah.
and a year later, another couple records. She writes a lot of songs, and they're all really good. I've been really into her. Great songwriter. Um, I always forget who I'm listening to
No, no,
whenever
that's
somebody
great. I mean,
asks.
I love that. I love that. And I love that, I'm kind of, I tend to gravitate towards prolific artists. I'm most interested in the people who just keep on letting it rip. Like Daniel Romano. I love Daniel Romano. Like, he just like doesn't,
Oh yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
just like,
It's
what,
so nuts.
it's nuts,
How?
It's just he puts out so many records and they're so good and so well realized and so full, and you're like, okay,
Yeah, and
that's
yeah, they're not just like acoustic records. They're full on like it's so
horns
wild.
and with an aesthetic and a whole vibe. I mean, I just love, because I feel a little bit more connected to what you were talking about, which was like someone who's found their voice and now it's like, let's go. Like, I'm not going to second guess things. I'm just going to party, and I'm just going to I'm going to move forward with seriousness. With seriousness, like I'm going to move forward. But I love that there's this energy there. I've been watching the Beatles documentary like everybody else. I don't know if you've watched it, but it has
Yeah,
some.
I've watched a bit of it.
It's really long, and at first I was like, why am I spending time watching this? And then I got obsessed with watching
It's
them.
really interesting.
It is, and there's so much play. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much play. They're fooling
Yeah,
around. Most
yeah,
people would
exactly.
lose their patience so
Mm-hmm.
early in that session,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And they're just goofing around and playing, but there's something about play, That is, it's funny. I just read this quote by Rick Rubin that was like something about how art is about this balance between but taking seriousness and balancing the seriousness of a work with the playfulness of it.
Mm-hmm. True. Very true.
And it's a funny thing to watch when they're kind of doing it because you're like, wow, they're goofing around, and then they like lay it, then they get serious, and they're like, okay, no, this is it, and then you're like,
Mm,
are you kidding me? You're
yeah,
singing Get Back right now, or
I know.
these crazy songs. So when was it like you? I remember when I first heard your music distinctly. I remember distinctly Sherry Jones, our manager, sent me the first couple songs that you had recorded, and it was unique at that time, and you were quite young. Like, let's go back to that. I don't know how old you would have been when Sherry came across your music. I think Joel might have come across. Did he come across it and then pass it along to
Mm,
Sherry? Let's talk
mm-hmm.
about that whole situation. Were you a high school kid? What was the story?
I was, yeah, I think I was like, I don't know, it must have been like 16 or 17. I was still in high school and I was recording at the Shambhala School in Halifax, like with a bunch of other kids. And Joel came in because we had a little like recording set up there. And Joel came in to just like listen to the songs one day and chat with us. And we each played him like a couple songs that we had recorded. And I think I played him Eden, which ended up on the first record, and a couple others that I think were just very much angsty teen songs that never made it anywhere. But he was impressed, I think, and he kind of kept in touch. And um, then I got a random call from Sherry Jones one day on my way to work, and she invited me to Gordy's songwriting camp. I think I was like 19, or no, it was my 20th birthday actually that I got the voice message on my phone. I freaked out. But yeah, so after the song camp, Sherry hooked me back up with Joel, and we met up at his studio and talked about um, making a record together. And I played in like every song I'd ever written. There was a ton of them, and we narrowed it down, and that was awesome.
Wow. That is, and so were you? When did you start playing guitar? Like, were you well? Because you were playing really well on these recordings. You were already doing like fingerstyle
Thanks.
guitar. You were pretty advanced from a guitar perspective, and harmonically, it was different. Like you had already
Mm,
kind of developed something unique. I'm sure that's what piqued people's interest because it wasn't just your regular three chord strumming
mm.
songs. Nothing wrong with that type of thing either. But these were their own entity. How did you discover your own sound even back then at 17? I mean, that's pretty early.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I always really loved music a lot. And I started playing guitar when I was 11 years old. So, and just became so obsessed with it immediately. I don't think there's anything. I have ADD, so it's like pretty like practicing and shit usually isn't really my, I find it hard to sit and focus, but I just became like hyper focused on guitar and like wouldn't put it down. If my friends would come over to hang out with me, I'd just like sit there and like ignore them and play guitar the whole time, like just completely obsessed. And then as a result, became even more obsessed with like listening to music. So I think I always had kind of interesting taste in music, I think, for a teenager or a kid. And I think I did understand um, what piqued my interest in other people's music was this like unique thing. And I don't know. I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what mine was. I think I just knew that
Wow,
for
even
some
at that
reason.
age, you had confidence to kind of go explore those sounds. That's interesting. Just because obviously most people kind of go in and try to fit into something kind of pre-existing.
Yeah, I think I heard Elliott Smith and I was like, oh, I really like finger picking guitar and like started doing that. But I don't know. Just, I'm not sure. I think I just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know where it comes from,
Yeah.
you know?
No, I mean, I think, yeah, that's, I mean, I think you're right. Most people probably don't, that's the magic part about it. What was
It's the
Shambhala
magic
school
part.
like?
I didn't go there. I just knew a bunch of kids that went there.
Oh, so you were, I wondered that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I
So
was just
you weren't raised in a Buddhist school or anything like that. No.
nah, I was
Just
just hanging out with the
okay.
Halifax kids. They were all
Okay.
cooler.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I loved it there because everybody was so much different than at my school. That like they're very open and really progressive. So it was really interesting for me as a queer teen to go hang out with them. Like they were talking about like gender identity and
Way
uh,
before any right.
way
Yeah,
before. Yeah, it
so
was so
interesting.
cool. Yeah, very interesting for me.
I think it stayed that way. I think it's still like that. That school.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I haven't been back since I was a teenager, but yeah, it's probably
That's
still the same.
right. That's interesting. But you went to school in Waverly? No. Yes.
Yeah, Waverly Fall River. Yeah.
Fall River.
Hmm.
Interesting. But did you play like in bands in high school? Did you like do you have a garage band? You like that kind of thing? That did happen.
Yeah,
It
yeah, I
wasn't
had a
all
four
just playing
track.
solo.
No, I had a band. Actually, when I met Sherry, I had a band and I was like, I want to play with my band. And she was like, ah, it's like you write all the songs and stuff. And I was like, okay. It was just like my buds from high school. So
Right.
um but yeah, I played with them a lot. I played the coffee houses at my high school. Um and there was a few kids at Lockview that I would play with and just hang out with that played instruments for fun. Um, yeah, yeah, I don't know. But it was never really like that serious, like playing with playing with
Right.
bands and stuff. I didn't start writing my own songs till later on when I was like 16, I think
Right.
16, 17. I can't really remember.
And now that you said that like through this pandemic going now jumping forward, you were saying that you've changed. Like you can't remember who you were. So we were just talking about, teenage Mo, and then career Mo, making records with Joel, touring a ton. So how do you feel like in which ways have you changed over this pandemic? What have been the big changes for you?
Oh, the biggest one is that I got sober. So I stopped drinking like a couple months into the pandemic. So it's been almost like 2 years now since I've had a drink. And I think that that has also really opened up um, my mind and allowed me to get creative again in a really nice way. I
Two
think
years, good for you. That
two
is
years, yeah.
congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thanks. Yeah, I think it was like I don't know. I have a lot more brain space now to be creative and actually think. I was drinking a lot, and I think it was just kind of I wasn't able to really make anything cool at the end there before I stopped. But yeah, I
Because it
think
was just
that's a
sucking
big
your energy and time.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
How has it felt being, I mean, besides being increasingly creative, how has the process been in terms of embracing sobriety and becoming sober and for the first bit and compared to now, how's the process been?
Mm, it's up and down. It was really difficult at first, and then it was like all of a sudden it was amazing, and I had this like weird like lust for life that I hadn't experienced in a while. Like I just was so happy and um really I was really happy about really small things. It was so nice. I would just like go for a walk and notice like little flowers and the trees and things. I was noticing all these small details in my life that I would have probably ignored before because I didn't have booze to be this stimulant for me anymore. So I was noticing all the small things in my life that were really nice. So that was cool at first. And then I think like the honeymoon phase ended and it was tough around Christmas. That was like 7 or 8 months in and then it kind of leveled off and now it's pretty easy for the most part. I just get kind of bored sometimes and feel like having a drink to spice up my life, but um then I just do something way healthier, like, go for a walk or hang out with my cat or write some music or
Right.
something. I'm just, the hardest part for me is just now is the fun that I feel like I'm missing. I know that when the bars open up, I'm gonna be like, oh man, I wish I could go hang out. But then I remember it's not actually fun, and it's just,
Yeah.
I'm
And
romanticizing
then you
it, and it was
remember it's
actually
not actually
terrible.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not actually fun.
And
It
that you
was quite
drank
sad.
you drank actually to make that experience tolerable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I imagine. Yeah, I get that. I can hear I feel that. And have you had mentors? Have you had people that have helped you? Like have you had people that you've been able to call to say, "Listen, I'm struggling," or
Mm, yeah, I have all my friends have been really supportive, and I can talk to them about it. And I have my friend Matt has been sober for a year longer than I have, or maybe a couple years longer. So I've talked to him a lot about it.
great,
And
yeah.
I've met a lot of people who are sober, and it's really nice. But um, I've read a lot of books that's been really helpful. And there's lots of people on YouTube that talk about sobriety. If I'm struggling, I'll just be like, someone sober, like, tell me about why it's good to stay sober, and just be reminded
Yeah,
of
right.
that. Hmm.
That's yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It's amazing that you know that YouTube has everything like that. I mean, it has
Yeah,
probably terrible stuff too, but my goodness, it can be a
there's
helpful
some
tool.
great, yeah, it can really can be. There's some real helpful
And
stuff on
boredom. There's
there.
been so much boredom, you know, over this couple years in many ways, right? Because we've been home and not doing the
Yeah,
thing. You know, the distractions that were usually there are not there right now. You know,
exactly.
so that
Yeah,
that
yeah,
part, in some ways, I mean, I think it has made many of us face those things about
yeah,
ourselves. It's like if we didn't want to do the internal work at the first of this, by now it's like it's absolutely overwhelming. Do you know what I mean?
it's
Like it's
just like
been
glaringly obvious after
it's
spending
glaringly obvious.
so much time alone with just yourself. But yeah, I think it's actually been positive in that way for a lot of people, myself included. I've been watching this show called Alone. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's like, I'm so obsessed. I love it. I'm so obsessed with it. It's like they drop off these sort of survivalists in the wilderness, like and it's a different location every season. They drop off like eight of them or something in a remote location. They're all separated, and then they're allowed to bring 10 items, and then they have to like survive in the wild, and they build shelters and stuff. And it's so awesome, but everybody gets to a point in the show where they've been alone for so long that they do all of this stuff just starts coming to the surface, like maybe stuff they've kind of haven't addressed in their lives, or they start realizing what's really important in life. And I've just been thinking about how it's the pandemic has sort of done the same thing for a lot of people, like when you have nowhere to escape from yourself or distract yourself anymore, you just kind of like all those things sort of bubble up.
Absolutely, and in relationships, and you know,
Hmm.
in so many ways, exposes those things. Yeah, it's like a living meditation. You know, like when you
Mm.
meditate, you're kind of just like sitting with your thoughts, and this is like 2 years of that. You know what I mean? Or you're sitting in kind of how you react and how you kind of so many things because it was just, and it's not like that. We still have lots of distractions.
Yeah. So
Do you,
basically, the pandemic has been a wellness journey.
well, for some people, I don't know if I don't know if it has been for me.
That's a,
I can't tell.
that's what I'm gonna start calling it
The
now.
wellness journey, the pandemic has been it's been like the opposite of a no, it's I don't know. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's many people who've been very sick. It has been necessarily a wellness journey,
Yes.
but then
No.
there's also
Yeah.
just like from my perspective too. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm healthy in a lot of ways. I am. I do. I'm pretty. My spiritual and mental health is much better than it was before the pandemic. I was in a
Same.
bad place. I'm in a good place. I've now have practices. I know now I have to carve out time. I hope. My biggest fear is that as things pick up again, I'm going to start forgetting some of these things. I don't know if
Hmm.
you have that. Like, I'm just like, okay, I know kind of what I need to do so I don't get super wound up or so I don't go into like self hatred or whatever, like self,
Hmm.
all the dark places that you can go, depressive thoughts or whatever. What do I have to do to bolster against that? Well, when you have all day, you can carve out some pretty nice, I need to walk in the woods. I need to have meditate. Well, it's like, you know, what do you do when you have to work or when you're driving 7 hours, then you have to play a show and then you have to lug your gear into a hotel? How do you like, I want to make sure I'm like bolstered enough. I keep on thinking I am. And then like one little thing happens and I'm like, you know what I
Mm.
mean?
Hmm.
So that's where I'm at now is like, okay, how do I make sure that like I'm this wellness journey is is gonna is gonna be like have a lasting impact.
Yes.
That's kind of what how are the practices that I'm trying to make normal. This is like one of the practices I think I want to keep the most is like
Oh
actually
yeah.
talking honestly to other artists, whereas like I didn't have the opportunity to do that, and I just felt like we would when we were like alone you know what I
Mm.
mean? But like I felt like it was just so nice to just be like open up a bit and be like, okay, I
Definitely.
can't go back and pretend I'm something I'm not.
Hmm.
I can't carry that weight and do the work.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I can't do that. Like I can, I can be a happy guy. I'm a happy guy, but I'm also like a guy who, gets really sad sometimes and is hard on
Yeah,
himself
yeah,
like everybody
totally.
else.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody does it.
You know.
Everybody does it.
So do you think that you would have were you um were you questioning sobriety before the like were you sober before the pandemic? Was the pandemic did it kind of like was that part of this?
Oh, it's always been something I've known I was gonna have to
Yeah, okay.
stop at some point, or like I wanted to stop, but wasn't sure if I could or how to go about doing that. I've tried in the past to get sober and it just hasn't stuck. I've gone like 6 or 7 months at a time
Yeah.
and then like gone back to it. But I don't know, for some reason, I was drinking a lot at the beginning, like everybody else was. And I woke up one morning and I was just like, I hate this. I feel trapped, like I can't stop, and I'm just gonna not drink today. And then the next day I was like, I guess I'm not gonna drink today either. And then I just kept going.
Amazing. It's so
I know.
inspiring. It's so inspiring.
It's
It
super.
really
I
is.
don't really. But it's so weird because I don't understand. I don't really understand how that happened because it has been so difficult for me in the past to stop. It's still kind of confusing to me why it stuck for this long. I guess you just kind of like get to a point with it where you just really, really are ready to get sober and then you do. And I think recovery isn't linear because it just isn't. I've tried and failed multiple times and I don't know, like maybe I'll have a slip up at some point. I don't know. But um yeah, I think something just like clicked and I stopped.
I think so much of it too is now being able to is imagining that it's possible. As you said, you kind of there was so much time there where you thought, I don't know if I could even do it, even if I wanted to. But then as you talk about it more with other people, you kind of realize that there's lots of people who are kind of struggling with this, and the more you can kind of, as you said, like it takes you have a friend who did it a year before, and then you can kind of go, okay, can I do this? And then they kind of go, yes, you can, and yes, it will make your life. I feel like more and more we're hearing from people who are sober who are saying, not only can you do it, but it actually has a positive effect on your life.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had no idea how good it was gonna make me feel. Especially like the longer I go, the better I feel.
Wow.
It's so easy to lose touch with yourself and to just suddenly not know who you are and realize you've been avoiding a lot of things with just by turning off your brain and drinking. It's so much nicer and like I like my life so much better now that I have clarity and I'm not avoiding and I'm processing everything in my life. It's just I feel so much more grounded now. It's so much better.
Wow. And what do you do? What are your moves? I mean, you said you sometimes just go for a walk, or what do you? I'm just thinking about myself. I'm thinking about I'm thinking about those times where I'm like, oh, I want to have a drink. I'm stressed. This is how I need to address this stress, my uptightedness or my worry. I'm going to
Yeah.
address it by doing this. When that becomes a habit, it's really tough to switch out of it. So when you get in a situation where you're like, now this would be a time that I would have, what do you move
hmm
toward? Is there something that you move towards, or do you just distract, or what's the move?
I don't distract because distracting is basically just the same
Yeah.
thing. I just am uncomfortable now. When I feel uncomfortable, I just feel
Yeah, right. You
uncomfortable and
sit in it.
I sit in it and I don't try and distract myself anymore because otherwise it just stays
Yeah.
in your body. And if I am processing and just letting myself feel whatever I feel, then you know, it doesn't stay in my body, which is good. It's good to just let it,
It's amazing. Of
do its
course.
thing. But it's so hard to do that. Nobody wants to feel uncomfortable, and it it always feels like something you want to get away from
Yeah.
or just, forget about, but you just kind of have to you have to sit in it and feel it. And
And then it
that's been the
passes.
hardest. And then it passes. Yeah. And it doesn't come up it's not like it doesn't come up in some like insidious way
Yeah.
down the road. It's not
Yeah.
hiding there.
Hiding and festering, being covered
Yeah.
up with a
Yeah.
depressant too, something that makes you feel kind of worse as you do it more. You know what I mean? It's not a,
Yeah. And
that's,
then you're like, well, why do I feel like shit? Is it the booze or is it me? And it's just kind of like
I
this,
see. Hmm.
you're like, am I even sad or am I just drinking all the time? I don't know.
But now you do know.
Yeah,
Like
now I do know.
this is the clarity part.
I mean, I was very sad. So when I stopped drinking, I was sad and I felt all those things and it was really difficult to feel them all and deal with that. But now more I'm much more stable and steady and I don't have all this sadness built up that I haven't dealt with.
Right. That's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, and that's as you said, like that's clarity. Clarity means that you're sitting in the uncomfortable, but it's the
Mm,
truth.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's the truth of where you're at.
hmm Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's okay to feel uncomfy sometimes.
Yeah,
That's what I've learned.
I think that's a pretty big part of maturity, adultness.
hmm
Is,
Definitely.
I as the more I think about these things and kind of sit in them, is that yeah, there are lots of it's uncomfortable. It's often it's also when we grow. It's when we
Definitely.
grow. It's when we it's easier said than done, because the point is being
Yeah.
uncomfortable is actually uncomfortable. Like sure, everybody says it. Everybody says
Yeah,
it, and
it
it's easy to
sucks.
say it here, but it sucks. It
Yeah.
sucks.
But
But to
you
deny
live,
that it's a part of your life, to then pretend that it's not, to go through your life as if it's you don't not, then that's a bigger lie. You know what I mean?
mm,
And
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because there's a certain, you know, you then don't fear it as much.
Yeah, because you're stronger because you know that you can deal with it.
Right. Right. Wow.
And it's not gonna kill you.
Uh huh. And you've been able to. That's so great. So great. And how your parents like you and you're able to you talk with your parents about all this stuff?
No,
No.
no.
No. I always want, yeah, I mean, I don't really talk to my parents about these things either.
I don't. It's just
I
kind
love
of
my
like,
parents. I
yeah.
love
Oh, me too.
I
But
love
it's
my
just,
parents.
just kind of my own journey,
Yeah, yeah. Wellness, the wellness journey.
my wellness journey.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think it is. It's yeah. I don't even know why I asked that. I was just kind of curious because I don't find myself. I think it's yeah. It's just a hard thing to talk to parents about. Maybe it's because I'm a parent now too. But I think it's.
Mm,
But I sometimes wonder about that. but yeah, it's important to talk to people about it. But yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure
for
my
sure.
parents haven't. And my parent, I love my parents. My dad's no longer around, but you know, but it was almost by watching them in him particularly in many ways that I feel like I've had to learn how to do some of this stuff.
Mm,
Do you know what I
hmm.
mean? Like I think part of this is generational. And
Definitely.
I think that for so much of this is for me is generational. I love my dad was awesome. He was a blast. He was super fun. I think you probably met him once.
I
Maybe
think I have. Yeah, I
yeah.
think I have met
He
your
was
dad.
fun. He was fun and funny and full of life, but he was a wildly up and down,
Mm,
heavy downs, private downs.
mm-hmm,
No one knew. And so
mm-hmm.
I think that part of it has just been about accepting that. I always felt like when I was watching him, I was like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah,
That
I
was it
know.
always kind of hurt me. I was like, it doesn't. You have this idea that you need to be perfect to the world. You need to show the
Yeah,
world perfection, and you need to be like a perfectly social, happy man all the time. And
and
it,
vulnerability is really hard for a lot of people, I think.
it was an impossibility. I think it was an impossibility because he had so much pressure on his shoulders, and there was a whole generational thing happening, and I don't know, but there was so much of it now that I look at it. So like naturally, I don't know if they were going to be the people I would talk to about it, but at the same time, they're people that I've learned from, and it's nothing against them. Like we obviously we should all be learning from our parents. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
some sort of that's how generations move forward. That's why
Hmm.
So but yeah, I think it's been a really interesting journey in my own case just to be like, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I always felt like he added such a huge burden to his shoulders by not talking about it.
I know, and it's funny how people have this sort of warped idea of what strength is.
Totally.
It's harder to be vulnerable, and I think that shows strength. And then also you're allowing the people that love you to care for you, which is something that people want to do for you. So you're kind of like giving them a gift by being vulnerable and not keeping them at an arm's length, letting them in on your inner world.
Yeah, that's
I don't know. I think about this stuff all
I
the
love
time.
it, Mo. I
I think
love it.
I think
I
it's just
love that.
like
I love it. I love it. I completely agree. I totally agree. I think that what you're saying makes total sense. It's really profound. And I think you're right. I think the idea of basically the that idea of strength as vulnerability, letting people in, it changes relationships.
it does. Yeah,
Fundamentally
and
changes relationships.
it does. It allows people to get closer to you, to feel closer to you.
And you them
Hmm.
because you've trusted them with that, you know what I mean? And but I think that the warped sense of strength is very interesting.
Mm.
Sometimes
I
I just
think
feel like it's like
people,
acting. It's basically just like we kind of associate it with just kind of good acting.
yeah, people are afraid of what's going to happen, but I think it's always a relief. I think it's scary, but it is always a relief, is
Oh,
what
you
I've
mean
been
it's
finding
always
to
like
be
telling the truth.
vulnerable.
Tell it basically
Yeah.
like yeah, speaking your truth is always a relief. Interesting. Yeah,
Mm.
I mean it
It's
makes
never as
sense.
scary as you think it's going to be,
Yeah, most
in
things.
my experience.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense for sure. And I feel like there's a lot that fits into that category. That's
Hmm.
not as scary as you think it's going to be.
Yeah, like going into the studio and producing your own songs, for example.
What do you got to
That was
lose?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you probably spent me too. I spent so much time feeling like I didn't have the right. Like
Yeah,
it wasn't even I was
same.
afraid, but I actually just didn't feel like I had this sense that no that's to be left to the professionals.
Hmm.
And I'm not one of those people.
Yeah,
I always wanted to
exactly.
play jazz. I always wanted to play jazz when I was younger. Always. And I didn't feel like I had the right education It was a matter of
Mm,
education, which is so ironic and so foolish. But it was this idea that like, no, no, those there were pros. You went to school, you did this, that you could play everything, and you can. That's how you, and only those people are allowed to play. And I had this like warped sense of like I wasn't allowed on stage until I,
mm,
and it carried over into a bunch of parts of my life where I just like felt terrified or like, yeah, that I didn't have the right. I didn't have the right
yeah.
makeup.
You know what's wild? How long it takes to learn things like this in a life. It's just, it's really wild how you think you know things, and then a couple of years go by and you're like, wow, I really didn't know anything.
I know. I'm 40 and I feel like a completely different person than I did at 37.
Yeah.
Complete. I feel exactly when you said that. I was like, man, I feel the same way.
Mm,
I was in a different place. I was in a completely different place. I had different. I felt, but I do. I too feel like I'm in a better place. I'm so glad to hear that you are feeling the same way.
yes, definitely.
I love this. I really appreciate everything you've been saying. No, I'm totally into it.
Oh yeah, this has been
Totally
an
into it.
awesome chat.
Good luck. I want to hear the rest of the record as soon as you get it done. Good luck in the studio.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Thank you.
Keep on crushing it. And good luck on the tour.
Thanks, David.
Have
Hopefully I'll
fun.
see you soon.
Yeah, I suspect we will. I look forward to it.
Me too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mo. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me
Right
on.
on. We'll talk to you soon.
See you
Peace.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.